my pleasure to be here out of the office, out of Stillwater, out of the administration building that I'm normally in. And as I had the opportunity to think about coming and speaking with you, I did think back to my roots. He saw me last week, and it was the day I was selling the property, and I was pretty upset. I was emotionally shaken. So again, it feels very nice to be here. Thank you for welcoming me and having me here. And now, here we go. Here's the real story. This is the story of the evening, or this is the highlight now. I am so pleased to introduce Mary Emery, Dr. Mary Emery. She is the director of Rural Prosperity Nebraska at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. And she earned her bachelor's degree at Livingston College and then her master's and doctorate degree at Rutgers University. During her career that spans over 30 years, she's been one of the preeminent scholars in rural community development. Her seminal manuscript, titled Spiraling Up, Mapping Community Transformations with Community Capitals Framework, helped launch Community Capitals Framework as a common tool and extension and research practices within the field of community development. Working with colleagues, her creation of ripple effect mapping has provided the profession with a tool to measure impact and effectiveness of community development programming. Because nothing matters unless you can measure it, right, Mary? All right, so Dr. Emery has a strong focus on impacting results, and she's helped many communities thrive, both in her own backyard and around the world. Her work in developing coaching techniques for community leaders centers around a sense of place and identifying pathways for communities to grow that span age, gender, class, and culture barriers. Dr. Emery has held many influential positions within community development agencies and institutions. During her rich career, she's received many distinguished honors and awards celebrating her work in training, diversity, evaluation, and innovation. Since 2004, she's co-authored 6 books. Now, anyone who's never been involved with writing a book is a long process, and it's a labor of love. She has, in the last 20 years, she's co-authored 6 books, 8 book chapters, and over 30 peer-reviewed journal articles. Dr. Emery's work has been foundational in the field of rural community development, and her work has broad impacts in both research and practical applications. Her drive to help communities co-create their desired community future has been of great significance to rural communities around the world. For these outstanding contributions, I'm pleased to present this plaque and a $5,000 award to the winner of our 2023 Rural Renewal Research Prize to Dr. Mary Emery.
Keep running into them today. I am very, very honored to have this award. It's a great honor to be recognized, and I want to particularly thank Dr. Falschweig, because if you have not tried to put one of these nominations together, you have no idea how much work you have to put into it. So thank you so much. Along with the prize, they said, guess what? You get to talk longer than you were planning on talking at this session. And so what I wanted to do is situate the conversation about journey mapping a little bit around the changing ecosystem of scholarly research. And in order to get that started, my background is community development. I'm an applied sociologist, and applied sociologists that do community development like to start a conversation by surfacing some of the wisdom in the room. So what I would like to do, see if I can get this going the right way, is ask you to think a little bit about how the scholarly research ecosystem has changed over the last 120 years, how are we doing research differently? Who are the people we're doing it with? What kinds of questions? What kinds of methods? What's the newest different thing you've done in research recently? And I'd like to invite you to turn to a partner and share your thoughts, and then maybe at the table come up with a few factors that you think are contributing to how our ecosystem of scholarly research is changing. So if we could take about 7 or 8 minutes for this, and then we'll surface some of your ideas and see how they connect with my ideas and how journey mapping might help us move forward in that work. So please visit with a partner.
Just the sheer volume of research and then talked about the impact of AI. So we went a long way.
Okay? Relatively young research. There ideas somebody wants to share over here? Up, over there.
I can be really loud.
All
So
right.
the idea of communicating our research has also become a big priority. So we have those that are like in special roles in our universities to make sure that our research is known and heard about, as it is very multidisciplinary and applied.
Yeah, apply. Another idea?
A recurring thread at our table was the shift from carefully designed and exquisitely controlled experimental information to practical experiences and the quality.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
So here's some of the things that I was thinking about, because I kind of spent a lot of time thinking about how we do science differently. First of all, who funds research and why has changed. So if you look at NSF now, all of a sudden they're really interested in science that moves the needle. So some of you who are social scientists may have also had the experience of people from engineering calling you up and saying, NSF said I had to have a social scientist on this grant. It's due tomorrow, can I put your name on it? It's not going to get funded because there's no social science content in it. Secondly, the equity equation. How do we demonstrate our science will do no harm? That's become more and more important, and it's not easy to do. Some of the other things is, I think people are now trying to look at the system. One of the comment over there about the randomized control design. Western science is really good at designing band-aids for problems. Really good at that. We need to look at systems. We need to look at what goes underneath where the band-aid is needed and how do we start thinking about that change. And I don't think it's either or. Band-aids are good in some places. Systems work is really important too. How do we get out of the argument about who's got the better way and into how do we integrate these things in ways that really help people? So a couple other things that you've mentioned. You know, first we were talking about multidisciplinary, then interdisciplinary, and now we have this concept of transdisciplinary. What's the science look like when it's no longer this or that, it's something new? How do we do that science, and how do we help people understand that science? Someone mentioned over there, moving from qualitative to quantitative. Really important for sociologists. And then, in this work, people have started to talk about epistemological pluralism. There's different ways of knowing at the table. We need to look at epistemological inclusivity, because just because there's different ways of knowing at the table doesn't mean that they're all listened to the same way. We all know there are hierarchies of privilege in academia. Inclusive ways of knowing is a way to help us move past that. We can start really looking at different mental models and paradigms. So you may be saying, what does that have to do with journey mapping that you were going to talk about? So if you're not familiar with journey mapping, It's a technique that's been around for a long time in marketing. And so it's typically used to figure out why customers don't make decisions. NPR ran a story not too long ago about a design-it-yourself furniture store, and people would come in, have this wonderful experience, or be a beautiful design, and they never come back. Some of you that have bought furniture recently probably know why. They didn't know what to do with the old sofa. Problem solved. Similarly, I was talking to Dr. Chen about the absence, the hard time you have closing the deal on doctors in rural communities. Long ago in North Dakota, before the Bakken Challenge, there was a 4-H leader in Williston, North Dakota, and they were having a terrible time recruiting health providers. So we're trying to figure out, they come here, they have a great experience, they really like us, and nothing. What happened? Well, we can't figure out what our kids are going to do if we move here. 4-H leader, photo voice. Kids in Williston created this photo example of all the things there are for kids to do in Williston. And it was very effective. So journey mapping can be a really effective tool. How I think it fits with how we do science differently is when we move it from trying to explain individual behavior, we look across journey maps to try to understand systems. So the first example I'm going to share with you, this is a journey map that came from a project we did on collecting and analyzing data about why Native students' retention rates are so low. They enter college at lower rates and they graduate at lower rates. We wanted to know why. So we asked them to draw their journey and looked at those journeys and, oh yeah, that kind of fits with what the university thought was going to happen. And then we interviewed them. So you'll see one of the things up there under ongoing support is isolated in labs. So if someone was looking at somebody's individual journey map, they would say, oh, we need to bump up support for those students in lab environments. When we look across the journey maps, we say, this is not an individual thing because more people are experiencing it. There's something else going on here. What's going on there? Well, you all probably had the experience in 3rd or 4th grade where it was a spelling contest or a kickball team and you were the last one picked. Remember that? For some of these students, that lab, Monday 3 to 5, is re-experiencing not being picked on the kickball team every week they're at the university. They're not the only ones that end up in that situation. Those labs are usually run by international students who have no clue what goes on in U.S. society around race, gender, and first-gen issues. This is a solvable problem. We don't need the Band-Aid here. We need to change how we train those students to run those labs. Now, Danella Matos, who's a really famous systems theorist, said, when you have a challenge in a system, what you should do is look for where everybody's doing frantic activity. So if you look at the university, we have a lot of frantic activity about extra mentoring, extra tutoring for those students. They don't need any more fixing from us. They need us to fix us, right? So journey mapping is a way to surface that. So another project I'm involved in is looking at precision ag. And we all know that there are these challenges with water quality and quantity in farming, right? So what are the ways in which we can incentivize farmers to engage in practices that have less impact on water? Is precision ag part of that equation? Can AI or machine learning figure this out for us? So this project involved, it's a 3-state project, involved doing a lot of interviews with farmers to try and figure out, how do they manage these decisions and what are the reasons why they choose one thing over another. And then they took that information and they did some design workshops that, again, kind of traced how those decisions are made. So kind of creating this journey in design to try and figure out where the issues are. One thing we know from these two pieces goes back to what Ed was talking about earlier, trust. First of all, do farmers trust us? Sometimes not. Maybe they trust the guy at the co-op who's going to tell them something different more than they trust us. Do they trust that machine with their data? What are the producers of those machines going to do with their data? Those are big questions. So what they're going to do, they're in the process of doing now, is they're taking all this information and they're going to kind of create this gaming strategy around potential journeys that farmers can take in making a decision about whether or not they would trust AI to help them make a decision about how they're going to spread their manure or their fertilizer or whatever. And in this context, a colleague who has a farming background reminded everybody, despite what AI says, if at the end of the day my tank is half full, I'm going to spread things to keep in mind. So they're going to create this gaming strategy to try and figure out where are the places where an incentive or different kinds of information would encourage farmers to engage in practices that are ecosystem friendly. So it's another way of thinking about the journey in the system and how we can use that, understanding that journey better to impact system level changes. So the next one I want to just talk about is, this is a new AFRA grant we got, Reimagining Community Leadership. Those of you that work in rural community repeatedly run into concerns about succession. How do we do the succession in our farm, in our business? But increasingly in Nebraska, we're hearing people say, the people that have always run our community festival have said, no more, we're not going to be here next year. We're going to be with our grandkids. You community have to find somebody else to do this work. How many rural communities have you been in where they can't find somebody to run for council?
Amen.
So, our solution in the past has been the Band-Aid of leadership development. Extension or other organizations swoop in, set up the leadership development, you got your new leaders, we're gone. The research shows that we have very little indication that those kind of Band-Aids have any impact whatsoever on community capacity. So we have 130 now people showing up in Kearney, Nebraska next week, and we're going to have them map their leadership journeys with the idea of helping them identify all of the pieces in their community that connect to leadership, and then how do we connect those pieces to have a sustainable leadership system, not a leader development program. So wish us luck. Now, Oklahoma and Nebraska, along with Missouri, Iowa, and Kansas, are part of a 5-state USDA Rural Food Business Center. So here again, everyone knows that a really big challenge when you're working with local and regional foods is that support systems are not connected in a reasonable way. So if I get some business planning over here, but I need some help with filling out a grant for USDA, I have to go find somebody else, and then if I want some help figuring out marketing, I have to go find someone else, and then I got the wrong answer, and now I go back to business planning, and then what do I do? So how do we figure out that ecosystem? And so we'll be engaging in journey mapping with different kinds of farmers and food processors in that regional, as part of that regional food business sector. And our expectation is that just like with the journey map with native student success, we'll be able to identify some of the places where it's not about them not understanding, it's about us fixing how that system works. So the last example I want to share with you, and this is the one that was supposed to be the main point of my presentation, is a project in western Nebraska which did not start out as journey mapping. We had quite a bit of UNL engagement in that community around substance use disorder and recreation, and said to them, these things can be connected in a wellness strategy. Are you interested? And they said, yes, we're interested. And there's a reason why they should be interested. This is the data from the county health rankings, and they are in the lower quartile for health outcomes, and they are in the lower quartile for health factors. I can't say that we had a great deal of success with that, but we did learn a lot. So, I mean, you can see here some of the challenges. Their juvenile delinquency rate is much higher, suicide rate, injury rate, and then all of the screening vaccinations are all lower. Curiously, gender gap pay is considered a factor, and you can see here it's considerably lower than state or national. So what we did is my colleagues and I, the other colleague was a communications person from University of Nebraska Omaha, and landscape architect, so sociologist, communications, not a lot in common, which was part of the magic here. So we did 21 in-depth interviews and a couple of different focus groups to just talk to people about wellness and talk about substance use disorder. And we wanted to collect that data, and then we told them that we would analyze it and bring it back as a resource map. And as you might imagine, there are hundreds of pages of transcripts involved in all of that. So going through that is a little bit of a challenge, but in the meantime, we came up with we were exposed to some other ways of analyzing that data, which I will share with you in a moment. But the thing that has been really important to us about this, and kind of comes back to how our ecosystem around scholarly research is changing, is that that community is 6 hours away from Lincoln. So every trip, 3 of us are in the car for 12 hours, right? And the communications scholar is from India, and she has never lived in a rural community. So a whole bunch of that time, particularly coming back, was Roma saying, this person answered this question this way. What did they mean? So we try to explain to it, because we lived in rural communities, we kind of understand how people think. And then she would say, but why? Why? And then we do some thinking. So, 10 trips to this, 60 hours of why do people say this? What are they thinking? And we realized there was a pattern. So no matter what we were talking about in that community, The high school guidance counselors say Native American students do not graduate here. In that community, the kids from the other side of town do not participate in any of the wonderful recreational opportunities or school projects. In that town, access to substance use disorder help is limited. Access to mental health is really limited. Children who end up in the hospital for 3 days for mental health leave that hospital and are told in 3 to 6 months you may be able to see somebody by Zoom. 60 hours of why did somebody say that? And we realized there was a pattern to all of it. And the pattern was what some people call benign stigmatization. Oh, those people have a real challenge. There's a real problem there. They really need help. If they would only do this, or their parents would only do that, it could be solved. Therefore, we're not responsible. Back to the iceberg. The mental model in this community is the challenge. No community wellness plan engagement strategy is ever going to work unless we find a way to confront that mental model. So the other thing we did is we ended up using journey mapping to code the data. So this journey map that you see here tracks what are the factors that influence addiction. Those are the orange boxes. There's a lot of them. The yellow is where people get into trouble, and the red are all the reasons why they can't get help. So this map is dominated by the red and the orange. The purple are the resources that support people. So you see how limited they are. So we brought this map back to them, and we scheduled the meeting for 5 to 7 on Monday, I think it was. And we thought, oh, those people come, they'll look at the map, and we'll probably be done by 6, maybe 6:15. 7 o'clock comes, and they are still talking about this map. So one of the things that we learned from this is using journey mapping as a way to analyze your data and give it back to people gives them a way to understand their system and the situation they're in ways that you had never thought of before. And one person said, this map explains the health disparities in mental health between rural and urban Nebraska. And so we've been using it in that context when we meet with people on campus or public health. This map is explaining why you need to pay more attention to these issues in western Nebraska. And this just highlights the red, so you can see that there are just a lot of things around collaboration and around treatment barriers. Now that big green star situation table happened after we did the initial mapping. So they decided, they came together across 12 agencies and 12 communities and said, we have people whose houses are on fire, they're in so much trouble. And if they're in crisis, we're allowed to not follow all the rules, so we can help them. So they put together the situation table. They are setting up a situation 2.0 for people that the house is not on fire, but they are taking steps now to address those treatment barriers in ways that they had not before. So there's some good news. We think the mapping will help them will help them as they continue to make some better news. So, talked a little bit about the changes in the ecosystem of scholarly research. I hope I've given you some ideas about how journey mapping can be a tool to help us navigate this emerging ecosystem. And I urge you to cherish any opportunity you have for a 6-hour drive with people who are not like you. In that 6-hour drive, don't forget to ask the why questions. This helps us find new ways to do science together. It helps us be intentional in learning from one another about how we do this work. And two things that came out of this importance of visualizing data and ways people can take action, and the importance of being intentional about reflecting on our experiences and what we think we're learning. So thank you so much. I have enjoyed so much the conference and the opportunity to talk with you, and I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Sharing this with us and talking about the changing ecosystems that we've seen in research. The type of work that you've shared with us takes time. And yet so much you talk about changes in learning. I think sometimes how we fund research and how we expect outputs creates this, I call it the hamster wheel. And so we become very short-term minded. How have you found success in getting funding for projects like this that I might not have results in 6 months?
Well, the Africa project is a 3-year project, so that helps. And I think on almost all these projects, we've had an extension component. So some of the work and time it would take to make connections in the community and get things going, we have the people that are already doing that. So I think including the people who are on the ground in the research team is an important piece of trying to get out of that. And we have to look for the 3-year grants rather than the 1-year grants.